Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm really happy we're finally doing this. I do apologize about last week, but we are here now, so we'll move on. My name's Amy. I am one of the animal care staff here at the Polar Bear Habitat. So we are located in Cochrane, Ontario, and that's about 8 hours drive north of Toronto. So we're pretty far north. We're still on a highway though, but we are the furthest north you can get on a road. If you were going to go to the James Bay, which is actually kind of like the tip of the Arctic really, and that's where wild polar bears live, that's about a 2-hour train ride north. It's around 250 kilometers north. So we're actually quite close to the native polar bear range. And that's obviously really great for our bears because they get a very natural environment, the weather, the temperature, things like that. They're all very similar for them when we're here. So the habitat was opened in 2004. It was originally opened as a way of bringing tourism to the north. Very quickly, it didn't really work that way because it's pretty quiet up here. Not that many people travel up here. So quite quickly, the facility changed to becoming a conservation and research facility. So we still welcome guests here every year, but it's with the goal of educating and teaching them about conservation and research with polar bears and what we can all do to try and save them and keep them in the wild for the future. Yeah, so those are our main goals at the moment. I'll point out if anyone has questions, I'll absolutely have time at the end. I guess if it's anything pressing, feel free to yell out, but yeah, we'll save questions till the end, might make it a bit easier. I'll point that out. Yeah, so here we have 3 male bears that live with us. Our goal when we take in bears is pretty much to take in bears that don't have anywhere else to go. So that could be maybe because they were orphaned out in the wild. It's not that common, but it does happen when small cubs do get orphaned. Under about a year to 18 months old, they have 0 chance of survival on their own. So sometimes if they are found, they are brought into human care. We also have bears just because they were bred maybe as part of a breeding program and the facility that they were bred at don't have space for them anymore, and so we get reached out to, and if we have space then we'll take them in. So our 3 boys at the moment are Henry, Ganok and Inukshuk. Henry is our youngest. It's his birthday in a couple of weeks actually. He'll be turning 8. So Henry is considered a sub-adult male, so that means he's kind of like a teenager is the best way of describing Henry. So everything that you kind of think of when you think of a teenager, he's energetic, he's hormonal, he's needy, he's playful, he's moody, he's a bit of everything, but he's such a character and he's really cool to watch him grow and mature into an adult bear. So Henry was born in human care. Henry is the first bear actually born in Australia. So he was born at SeaWorld on the Gold Coast in Australia. His dad was a rescue from the Hudson Bay, so that's north of us, and his mom was actually from a zoo in Russia. And so SeaWorld has those bears. Henry was bred. His genes are very unique because Canadian and Russian bears would generally never meet out in the wild. So yeah, his genes are super important. SeaWorld wanted for him to live somewhere a little bit more natural, and so they reached out to us when he was about 2.5, and he made the long journey in a crate on multiple different airplanes to get here. And yeah, we're hoping he'll be with us for a long time to come because he's still growing. He's still kind of getting his legs on what the world means. And so Ganok is 11 years old. He's our biggest bear at the moment. He's just under 1,100 pounds. He's about 1095 at the moment. He's our gentle giant though. Ganok is just so chill with everything. He really just would like nothing more than to sleep his day away in the sun. He's a real sleepy kind of guy. He is the oldest offspring of Inukshuk, who is our 3rd bear, and Inukshuk was actually a rescue. So Inukshuk was 3 months old, so he was about this big when he was rescued, looked something like that. And that was up on the Hudson Bay, which again is just north of us. So his mum unfortunately was shot when she came too close to a town up there, and so he was orphaned. But the people who shot her did the right thing. They reported it, and then he was taken in by the Toronto Zoo originally, and then he moved up with us full time in 2012, and he's been with us ever since. He fathered Gannock and a few other cubs at the Zoo Sauvage in Quebec. So he's traveled around a little bit. Inukshuk has very, very high testosterone levels. So as part of a breeding program, he's super important. He's getting a little bit older now. Inukshuk is 18 now, so we're really hoping that he can just stay here with us and just kind of live out his life in space and snow and all those things that they like. So when bears come to us, we don't necessarily take ownership of them. So that means that the facilities that own them still own them. They just kind of ask if we can take care of them for a while. So we don't have a whole lot of say if that facility wants to move that bear somewhere else, maybe for a breeding program or something like that. But we definitely do push really hard to keep them here as long as we can. We do have 24 acres of space here, so it is the largest facility for polar bears anywhere in the world, and we are the only facility that takes care of just polar bears. So there's a lot of polar bears in human care around the world, but we are the only one that takes care of just polar bears. So all of our knowledge, all of our resources, everything we do, everything we know goes right back into these bears, and as well as into conservation and research programs with wild bears as well. So polar bears are super seasonal creatures. Their lives completely rely on what the environment is doing around them. So as I'm sure you probably know, polar bears live in the Arctic. The Arctic is on the top of the planet. The Antarctic is on the bottom. There are no polar bears in the Antarctic. That's where penguins live. So penguins are on the south, polar bears are on the north. And the Arctic, while you think of it as probably mostly frozen, lots of ice, lots of snow, it is like that for a large chunk of the year, but there are certain parts of the Arctic that actually thaw out fully in the summer, and there's greenery and there's plants and there's flowers, things like that. So as the seasons change for the bears, they have to change with it. So in Cochrane right now, we are in the springtime. So the ice and the snow is melting. I can kind of show you what it looks like outside. Turn this around. So it's kind of green. There's a little bit of snow left on the ground, but it's mostly just kind of, green. We're coming into the springtime. And so for our bears, that means it is coming toward the end of the breeding season for them. So we don't breed our bears here. We just want to give them a good life while they're here. We don't want to go adding to the population. The reason for that being is within human care, there's only a finite amount of spaces, and within Canada, we are full. And we can't send polar bears down to you guys because of different laws between the two countries. So anyway, we don't breed here, but they still go through this huge hormonal flux in the springtime. So their testosterone levels shoot through the roof. Their appetite actually decreases a whole lot. So they're not really interested in eating at this time of year. They become very attached to one another, but always one specific bear. So Henry's very attached to Gannock right now. Gannock's attached to Inukshuk, and Inukshuk's attached to Henry. So that's challenging because it's a bit of a love triangle, but it's only for a couple of months, and so they work through it. So right now they're kind of coming down out of that big testosterone surge. So they're getting a little bit more interested in just relaxing and sleeping. They're eating a bit more now. They're interacting and playing with one another. So yeah, it's kind of nice. We're coming out of that breeding season. So for the wild bears, they're actually doing breeding as well. This is a really important time for them to breed. It's also a super important time for them to hunt. So in the springtime, when most other baby animals are born, so are baby seals. Seals are polar bears' #1 food source. They rely on seals to survive. And baby seals are completely vulnerable when they're first born, and they are a perfect high-calorie meal for a polar bear. So polar bears use their sense of smell to find their food mostly, and so seals use what are known as breathing holes, and so it's literally a hole that they make in the ice. They stick their nose up through it, and they breathe, and then they go on their way again. If they're really unlucky, then there's going to be a polar bear who's been sitting or standing at that hole for maybe a couple of hours if it's lucky. Sometimes a couple of days. Polar bears will just sit at these holes and wait because that means that they're using very little energy and they're going to be able to get that snack. They're lightning fast. They reach down into the hole, they grab the seal, they pull it back up onto the ice again. So the baby seals, they're actually born into lairs. So it's like a hole inside the ice that the mothers make, and they access it from the bottom. Through indigenous learning, they've actually discovered that polar bears can smell a meter down through solid ice. So polar bears can actually smell those little cubs, the pups inside the layers. They'll stand on their hind legs and they crash down with their front legs, and they'll break into that lair, and that's how they can access baby seals. So that's the main thing that they're doing right now. They're breeding, they're hunting, and yeah, they're breeding as well. So breeding is obviously super important, keeps the population going. It only happens once a year in the spring. And so males are going to be actively searching out for those females. Their testosterone is going to be so high, that's all they're really thinking about. A male who gets on the scent of a female will actually stop eating, and he might stop eating for a few weeks because he's just so intent on finding her. When a male does find a female, they will court for a couple of weeks. So they will, follow each other around. He mostly follows her and badgers her into breeding as many times as they can. When she's done with him, she's very clear and she says, yep, you're done, go away. And then he'll go off and maybe eat something, maybe go and find someone else to breed with. So yeah, really important time of the year. The only females that won't be breeding are females with cubs right now. Cubs stay with their mothers for around 2.5 years. So it's quite a time between their breedings. It's 2.5 to 3 years between each time they breed. So as we come into the summer, obviously the temperature is getting warmer. For the bears that are closest to us, they're in the southern Hudson Bay population, and they actually come onto land in the summertime. So in around end of June, July, all of the ice that's in the Hudson Bay and the James Bay melts, it disappears, and all those bears have to come on land. So while they're on land, they don't have the ability to hunt. They use sea ice as a platform for their hunting. So without the sea ice, they can't hunt. So largely what they're doing between around end of June, July through to pretty much November is they're fasting. They're not eating anything at all. They're resting. They can graze on certain things. So there are like small plants that they will eat. Goose eggs, there are a lot of geese in the Arctic that nest on the ground. So they can decimate goose populations pretty quick actually. So yeah, they'll eat the little berries. If something really good like a whale carcass floats up on the beach, they will absolutely go for that. Polar bears, when they're fasting through the summertime, they'll lose around 1 kilogram of weight a day. So that's around 2.2 pounds of weight every single day. And that's just when they're resting. That's when they're not walking around and using extra energy. So it is really important that those bears just kind of lay low, and they're going to be surviving off the fat stores that they've built in the winter and the spring when they're hunting. So for our bears at this time of year, they get to eat year round. We don't put our bears through a fasting and a feeding period. There's just no real need. Obviously in the wild it is, but here it's not a need. But what we do is we lower their calorie intake. So polar bears overheat very quickly. It's the main thing you got to worry about for polar bears in the summer. Even wild polar bears can overheat if they're running around in the summer. So we encourage our bears to lose weight by lowering their calorie intake, and we do that by bulking up their diet with fruits and vegetables. Polar bears can't digest fruit and veg the way that we do. They pretty much, they like eating it. They'll eat it, they'll chew it, and then they'll poop it out about 24 hours later. They really don't digest it. They don't get the nutrients out of it. So it's more just something to keep them full, and they like the taste of it rather than actually giving them nutrients. So our bears do similar to what the male bears are doing. They do a lot of sleeping. They do a lot of swimming. They spend a lot of time in the pool. They'll also spend a lot of time in our lake. We have a 10-acre lake that they can do whatever they want in, and so they were having a swim this morning. So they just kind of lay low in the summertime. And then once we come through to the fall is the most active time for our bears. In the fall, their hormones are at their absolute lowest. So they're very social, they're very food driven, they're very interested in interacting with one another and with their enrichments. So you will see lots of play behavior from them throughout the fall. Lots of sparring and wrestling. So sparring is when bears stand up on their hind legs and they push on one another's chest. It's a very male thing, females don't do it. And it's a friendly competition. It's a way of building muscle strength. It's a way of bears showing each other who's big, who's not. the goal is not to hurt each other. It is completely play. If one bear is done, they'll just stop and walk off, and the other bear will find something else to do. So for wild bears, they are coming back to the coast. They know that the weather is getting colder, that the winter is coming. So they want to be on the coast, ready for that ice to come back. And so you'll actually find big groups of males together in the fall. They do a lot of sparring and wrestling and interacting with one another. The females, they stick to themselves. They don't want to be anywhere near the males, so they'll be off doing their own thing. And then once the ice starts to freeze up, closest to us, it starts to freeze up in around November, early November, they're going to head out into the ice and they're going to start hunting as quick as they can, because they have been fasting since June, end of June, July, right through November. So yeah, it's really important that they actually start eating. The only bears that don't head out onto the ice again are females who are pregnant. So females that have bred back in the spring, if it is a successful breeding, they don't actually become pregnant straight away. Polar bears and other bear species go through a thing called delayed implantation. So what that means is the sperm and the egg meet, they fertilize, but it doesn't actually start to grow straight away. It just floats, is the term they use. It floats around in the uterus. They'll go through the entire rest of the spring and the summer and the start of the fall. In the fall, the females closest to us, they'll actually come inland and they make their dens in the earth. So when they're denning, they're going to make sure that their den is, in a good location, that they are comfortable. If they have enough body weight, if they've got enough fat, then they will actually implant that little embryo and then it will start to grow. So yeah, we don't actually know specifically how long polar bears are pregnant for, because they go into the den around November, but the cubs are born, from what we can see in human care, in around January-ish. So it might only be a couple of months that they're pregnant for. When a little baby polar bear is born, it's about this big. So it weighs just about a pound. It doesn't look like this though. They're pink and they don't have any hair. Their ears are closed. Their eyes are closed. They're completely dependent on their mothers, and they are going to stay with her in the den for the next 2 to 3 months. And they're going to be drinking her milk and growing as fast as they can. And then when they pop out of the den, they're roughly this size. So they grow quite a lot while they're in the den. While they're in, once they come out of the den, the mother will pretty much want to go and start hunting, because she probably hasn't eaten since June the previous year. So it's about March that they come out of the den. So she's going to take them out onto the ice and she's going to teach them how to hunt. Polar bears, as I mentioned before, stay with their mothers for around 2.5 years, which is actually a really long time. For animals, usually it's about a year, but polar bears stay with their mothers for around 2.5 years. In that time, they get taught everything they need to know about hunting, about how the environment changes, about how to stay safe from big males. And so, yeah, they're going to stay with her until that time. Separation from mum is pretty rough. It happens in the springtime when pretty much a male will smell that female. He'll come over to see if she's ready to breed, and she won't protect her cubs anymore. If they're small cubs, she will protect them and she'll tell that male to go away. Once they're old enough to go fend on their own, she'll just stop protecting them and they'll just have to leg it, or else, that big male's probably going to do them some damage. So it's pretty rough in the wild, and they'll just go off and do their own thing, and then they're largely solitary for the rest of their life, other than that fall time when they're hanging out with one another. So that's kind of the yearly cycle of a polar bear. Wild polar bears live into their males late teens, females early 20s, so their lives aren't really that long. In human care though, because they always have veterinary care if they need it, they've always got food available to them, they can live into their early 30s. It's quite common. So yeah, life with humans is actually quite a bit longer. So some of the stuff I have behind me here. So this is the skull of a polar bear. So they are absolutely huge. They have an incredibly wide jaw as well, so that's how they grab those seals in the ice. The big teeth on the front there, they're canine teeth, so that's what they use for kind of grabbing onto their food and tearing. They do have molars in the back, kind of like we do, but they're really, they're quite sharp. because they don't do a lot of grinding of food. They don't really do a whole lot of chewing, to be honest. Polar bears aren't very good at chewing. But the most important thing about a polar bear skull is these. So this area here would be filled with muscle. So that's what controls their jaws. So that's how they move their heads. And this muscle runs over the top of their skull and down the backs of their necks. Seals, a large seal can weigh a few hundred pounds and they can just pull them up out of the water. Really big male polar bears can actually pull beluga whales out of the water, and they're a few thousand pounds. So those muscles are super strong. They help them hang on to that prey and to pull it up out of the water so they can eat it. On Inukshuk, when you watch him eat, the muscles on the top of his head here actually move like this. It's super cool. You can actually see him chewing, and just how strong those muscles are. And then we also have some claws. So these are casts of claws. So polar bear claws are black. They're really short and they're strong. They're not very long because they can't climb. Evolutionary polar bears lost that ability to climb. But they're really important for gripping on ice and for grabbing onto those seals. So polar bears are the biggest of the bear species. The only bear that comes close to them is the brown bears that live on the Kodiak Islands. They can grow up to around 1,000 pounds, but a really big polar bear can be up to around 1,500 pounds. But in comparison, that is a brown bear claw. So brown bears do a lot of digging. They do a lot of climbing. And so they need that curve for climbing, but they don't need as much strength because they're not holding onto really huge prey. They're mostly scavengers for their meat prey. And then that's a black bear. So black bears, as we know, are smaller, but they have a similar diet, mostly, honestly, they're mostly vegetarian for black bears. And so it's nice and curved for digging and for climbing. Black bears definitely climb trees to get away from other bears, mostly. And then in comparison, this one is a black bear skull. So much smaller, looks kind of similar, but yeah, just much smaller because they are just a much smaller bear. To be honest, black bear skulls can get bigger than this one. This one definitely isn't the biggest, but it does give you a pretty good size comparison. So we do also have a pelt here. So this pelt was donated to us by the MNR. And so let me just turn the camera around so it's easier. There we go. So yeah, this pelt was donated to us by the MNR. Judging by the size of it, it's probably maybe a female or a sub-adult male. It's definitely not as big as the pelts can get. So this fur here is super, super dense. You can see how thick it is. And it has 2 layers to it. So it has a thick kind of woolly underlayer, which helps keep them warm. And then all the longer hairs on the outside are called guard hairs. Males, the way that they show that they are, you know, a good male to breed with is they have really, really long hairs on the backs of their front legs. Inukshuk has very, very long guard hairs. They're a bit over 10 inches long. They're huge.
Yeah, just well, no.
Yeah, and so this here is
what the
kind of just a model.
Right, so for 65 million years, they were in Cretaceous. Okay. And then you need to draw a little picture of a dinosaur.
Yeah, so this here is a model of what a polar bear's fat would look like. So polar bears have around 4 inches of fat on them. Then they have black skin, which is super cool. And then they have their fur on the top. So you can kind of see the woolly stuff underneath and then the longer hairs on top. In the springtime, polar bears shed like crazy. They shed out that furry winter layer from underneath.
That's a period.
And then in the summer, their coat's quite a lot shorter just because they don't need that extra warmth in the summertime because, yeah, you know, they will overheat. Yeah, so probably the most important thing that we need to talk about with polar bears is climate change. Climate change is kind of one of those topics a lot of people seem to shy away from because maybe we don't understand it or it just seems like too much of a huge deal. The basic science behind climate change, I'm not sure how much you guys know, so I'll just give you a basic rundown. Essentially, around our planet is a layer of gases and they make our planet habitable by trapping in heat from the sun. And so that layer of gases is completely normal. It's formed from natural processes such as decomposition of plants and us breathing out. So it's a completely natural thing. What's happening though, since the Industrial Revolution really, is the more fossil fuels that we burn, the thicker that blanket is getting, because all those gases are getting trapped around the planet. So as you get a thicker blanket, imagine like putting more blankets on a bed, the more blankets you have, the warmer it's going to get. And that's pretty much what's happening to our planet. We're adding too many of these gases into the atmosphere, and we're warming our planet too quickly. So you guys are a history class, so I'm sure you know that we've been through multiple different stages in our planet over the last, millions of billions of years. We've been through ice ages, we've come out of ice ages, and so that is completely natural. But what is happening with human-caused climate change is it's happening too fast. So usually these warming periods that we've seen over the millennia, they take a really, really long time, and animals can evolve and they can adapt, and that we gain species and we lose species, but it happens over a really, really long time. The problem what's happening now is it's happening too fast, and the animals cannot keep up, and the plant life cannot keep up. So what's happening is the ice in the Arctic is still forming every year, and it's still melting every year. But the time that it forms takes longer. The time that it melts comes earlier. So that hunting period for the polar bears, when there is ice there, is decreasing. So they have less time to hunt. And also it's becoming less stable. So even if the ice is there, if it's not stable enough, the bears can't move on it efficiently. They're going to be spending more time swimming, and that takes a lot more energy than walking. The other thing that polar bears use ice for, bears in the very far north, much further north than the southern Hudson Bay bears, they actually den in the ice. The ice kind of comes together and it makes these kind of big mounds, and so they actually den inside that ice. If the ice isn't stable enough, they just can't den there. Dens are collapsing on females and cubs. So the big effects that we're seeing from climate change so far with polar bears is the number of cubs that are being born is getting lower. So usually twins and triplets used to be quite common. We're seeing now maybe 1 or 2 cubs. Bears aren't living as long either, because without that hunting time, some of the older bears just aren't strong enough to last that longer ice-free period. So they're just not living as long. They're also getting smaller. Bears in general are just smaller than they used to be, just because there isn't enough food around for them. So polar bears around the Arctic, they live around the entire circumpolar Arctic. And so there's 19 different subpopulations of bears, and each different subpopulation is managed by the countries that it falls within. You'll hear different things about how polar bears are doing in the Arctic. Some places, the populations are actually quite stable, because so far the ice is quite stable there. The bears that live in those more southern populations, they're the ones that you're going to be really hearing the problems that are happening with. And that's just really, it's a peek into the future. We can see these problems are happening. It's happening in the southern populations, and it's going to start happening in the more northern populations too. So I don't like to sound dire, because we definitely haven't hit that point of no return yet. There's still a lot that human beings can do. Probably the most important thing for you guys as you get a bit older is voting. Vote for those in power that want to see change, and they want to see, our planet survive and be healthy. I don't care who it is, as long as they believe in that, because they are the ones that can make major change, because we need to start doing things on a really big scale. The world is going in the direction of more electric cars, things like that. If you can't afford an electric vehicle, try walking, try busing, carpooling, things like that. All these things that are going to lower our greenhouse gas emissions, what is really going on, is all going to help. A big one that you can do that not a lot of people know about is actually eating less meat. So cows and sheep, they create huge amounts of methane through their digestive system, and methane is one of those gases that are around our planet. If we can stop relying on these heavily farmed agricultural animals as much, we're actually going to massively lower our greenhouse gas emissions. So one thing I like to encourage people to do is meatless Mondays. So just on Monday, have a dinner that has no meat in it. It might not seem a lot, but if thousands of millions of people are doing it once a week, that's going to be a lot less of those farmed animals that we rely on. So yeah, there's stacks that you can do. I won't go through the whole list, but I do encourage you, if you do want to do something, to, do a little bit of research on your own. It's super easy. Like even behind me, I don't even turn these lights on in here anymore, just because there's no real need. It's bright enough as is. So yeah, there's lots of things that can be done because, we love our bears here, but they do belong in the wild, and that is where we would prefer them to be. So I do encourage you all to, take climate change seriously. It's not as, complicated as we think, but there is a lot that we can do about it. Okay, well, I'll stop talking because that was a lot of talking from me. If you guys have any questions, feel free to, shoot them my way.
They are, Amy, they're coming up to the mic, and
Cool.
and when they're done, are we going to take a quick peek and see if they've come up near the window?
Sure, yeah. Let me look out. We do have the live cameras on them, so let me just check the camera and I can tell you where they are, and then maybe you'll find them. Yes, we can probably go look for them after this. Take you guys for a walk.
Oh, I like walks. You want some questions now, Amy?
Yeah, let's do questions and then we'll go for a walk.
Sounds great. Here they come.
Hi, my name is Jessica.
Hi.
I was wondering what your favorite bear that you've met there at your facility is.
See, it's like asking someone what their favorite child is. It's really hard to say. We did have a bear here. He was an older bear. His name was Eddie. We had him a couple of years ago, and he was amazing. He came in pretty rough shape. He didn't move very well. And he really just kind of, I don't know, he grew here and he gained so much, and he got to interact with other bears, and he swam out in the lake all the time. He just went through this huge transformation. So yeah, Eddie's my man. I miss him so much. He had to go back to his other facility, but yeah, he was wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Kylie.
Hi.
So I've read somewhere that you can get DNA from a polar bear's paw print, and I'd like to know if that's like only like partial DNA or if it's like actual like their full DNA that you would get from like drawing blood.
Super cool question. I haven't heard DNA from paw prints before. Footprints from polar bears are super important because that's how they spread their smell. So when males are trying to find a female, he's actually going to follow footprints, and he can tell the difference between a male and a female's footprints and a female that might be ready to breed and might not be ready to breed. So there's definitely information in their feet. As far as DNA goes, I don't actually know. I haven't heard that one. I'll have to look that up. They do get DNA from hair, from blood samples, from fat samples, things like that. So yeah, no, I haven't heard that one before, but I'm definitely going to look that up. That's a cool question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Mason.
Hi, Mason.
My question is, have you ever worked at any other conservation sites for polar bears or for any other animals?
Not for polar bears. Before this, I lived in BC, and I was at a bear rehabilitation center. So they take in orphan black bears and brown bears, and they raise them up and then they release them again. So that was completely different to here because those bears, they need to be wild. They need to stay, have a healthy fear of humans. Whereas here, we have a great relationship with our bears. They have to be comfortable with us. And then prior to that, I lived in Cambodia, and I was working with sun bears and moon bears, and most of them were rescued from pretty bad things like the restaurant trade and the pet trade and bear bile farming and things like that. So yeah, I've been with quite a few different bears. These are my first polar bears, and I'll tell you what, they're completely different to every other bear. They're something else of their own, but I'd like to tick all the bears off one day.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Emma.
Hi.
My question for you, so when a bear does come in for rehabilitation, how long on average does a bear stay with you guys until it's released?
So it depends, I guess, the reason that they're coming. So with rehabilitation for us, that's more as getting them up to, like a healthy mentally stable state physically as well. Polar bears, unfortunately, you can't release back into the wild again because they don't gain those skills they need to learn within the human care environment if they don't have their mothers. So like Gannett, for example, Gannett came here and he was 2.5. He's now 11, so he's been with us that whole time. Same with Henry, he's been here his whole life. Eddie, that I mentioned before, Eddie was only with us for about 18 months just because his exhibit back at his old facility was getting renovated, so they needed somewhere for him to go, so he was only with us for 18 months. So ideally we would like to take in bears for the rest of their life so they can just live out their life peacefully. Having said that, if there's a bear in need, then we're not going to say no, but yeah, we try not to move them around because it is pretty stressful for them.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sawyer.
Hi.
My question is, are there any other animals that live in the Arctic that are important that we preserve?
Cool question. Okay, so yes. So polar bears are the very top of the food chain. So anything under that disappears, that's going to affect everything. And the thing about Arctic animals is they call them indicator species. So for example, like let's say that, I don't know, the sea ice melts. This is the most dramatic option. The sea ice melts. That's kind of like the soil being taken away from a forest. So it's the very base of the food chain is that ice, because there's lots of little things that grow underneath the ice, all the plants. The fish eat the plants, the bigger fish eat the smaller fish, the seals eat the fish, and then the bears eat the seals. So if you lose that ice, if you lose that little those organisms underneath, you're going to lose everything. And that means that things have gone pretty badly, and that's also going to be affecting us as well. So climate change doesn't just affect them. It's not just that we love polar bears and they should be there, because we do, but like climate change affects, absolutely everybody. So if we lose them, things are really going to change for us too. So I'd say every Arctic species, to be honest, starting at the little ones.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caleb.
Hi.
I was wondering, do you have a favorite memory with one of the bears in the facility?
Do I have what, sorry?
A favorite memory with one of the bears in the facility?
Oh my gosh, favorite memories. I have so many. God, I don't know, my brain's racing now. I guess the first one that pops into mind, we were doing some crate training. So essentially that means that the bears come in this kind of like a travel crate almost, but it's bigger and it's wider. And we were trying to teach him to roll over so that we could see like different parts of his body for like veterinary checks. And I was in front of him and I was trying to get him to roll over just by saying roll over and, moving my hands around. And then all of a sudden he just kind of threw himself into this roll over position and he just totally got it. And I got so excited and he got excited, and then we were jumping around and giving him lots of food as reinforcement. And I turned around and my colleagues behind me were also lying on the ground because we were all rolling over to get him to roll over. And then he just got it. And so it was a really special thing because he actually knew what we were asking. It was the biggest thing. They're so smart. And to have that connection, it really just kind of validated it. But I don't know, there's a lot, but that's kind of the first one that popped into mind.
Thanks.
No worries, thanks.
Hi, my name is Claire, and my question is, what inspired your passion for conservation?
Good question. I've always been a teddy bear kid. So, some kids want dolls and everything. I was a teddy bear kid. My mom just could not stop adopting animals when we were younger. So I think just my family really brought me into it. I was, maybe 13 when I first went to this, it's like a conservation luncheon for bear bile farming bears. I don't know if you've heard of that. Yeah, it's terrible. Oh, it's absolutely, don't look it up, it's terrible. But essentially these bears are kept in cages, these tiny cages the size of their bodies for their entire lives. And essentially they just pump out bile from them constantly. And it's the most horrific thing you've ever seen. And yeah, I think that was the big one because it was so unbelievable that people would do that, but also why would people do that? So I think that was a big thing. But yeah, that definitely really spurred me because then I went to Cambodia about 10 years after that. And then, yeah, Cambodia was really the place that kind of turned me on to conservation. But I don't know, I've always wanted to work with animals. It's just yeah, just the way it is.
Thank you.
No worries, thanks.
Hello, my question is how or what's in the paw prints to help the males tell the difference between like the male and the female, or the female that's
Yeah, so they give off chemical markers through their feet. So there's different types of scent that comes out of the feet. So it's just like, yeah, like the chemicals and the hormones that are within them. So it's mostly the hormones, yeah, that they smell coming through their feet. I don't think they know specifically like how exactly that process works. We just know that it comes through the feet. One thing with our bears that we notice, especially in the breeding season, is when they pee, they'll just stand there and they get like pee on their feet, and then they'll sit there and smell their own feet for a while. So like it could be that there's also, you know, they're tracking urine around the place on their feet, and there's lots of hormones that come through that. So yeah, exactly how a polar bear can tell the difference between a male and a female, I guess they're picking up, yeah, on those different chemical markers, which is just amazing that, yeah, they can smell chemicals. So yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Scotland.
Hi.
My question is, through the years since you guys have opened, about how many bears have you guys been able to care for?
The most we had at one time was 5. And in total, we've had 9 bears here. Yeah, over the years, yeah, we've had a total of 9. The most, yeah, we had at once was 5, and that was a handful, I'll tell you that. So yeah, kind of 3 right now is pretty ideal, but we've got space. We could technically take up to about 6.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Amy, I'm back.
Hi, have you got a question?
They're a smart bunch. We enjoyed very much that wonderful Q&A. And now we want to take a walk.
I agree. Let's go for a walk. Okay. So I'm just gonna have to go outside. If I drop out, I'll call back just because I'm gonna go through Wi-Fi and different things because we're a big facility. But anyway, so this is us. So it's pretty foresty up here. Everything's pretty natural. We did get a bit of a dumping of snow a couple of days ago, and we're just losing that now. But yeah, the bears are all the way around this way, so we're just gonna go for a walk and see if we can find them. Have you guys lost all your snow yet? Has it warmed up?
Oh, yes, yes. As a matter of fact, we had an unusual snow a week ago. Today, our high is 78.
Okay, I'm coming in a different Wi-Fi now, so hopefully the connection will get a bit better. So yeah, we have 24 acres for the bears here, but the entire site is around 70 acres. We definitely don't use all of that, but we have got the space if, you know, we ever wanted to expand. Okay, I see someone. So they're pretty dirty and muddy at the moment because they're in the springtime and they enjoy rolling around in anything that's messy. So you've got all 3 actually. So just on the left here is Inukshuk. They're probably hoping for lunch, so they might get a little bit rowdy because I don't have lunch with me. This is Henry. And this is Ganna. His muddy, muddy paws. So Henry and Inukshuk are housed in together today. Ganuk is separate because Ganuk does not get along with Inukshuk. And Henry's a bit much for Ganuk right now. Henry's a little too attached and he gets a bit mean. So yeah, they're separate at the moment. But there's Ganuk. Inukshuk's being patient. But yeah, so they're super grotty. They're super dirty. But I don't know, that's a happy bear. There's an extra. So if you can hear Henry, he's making kind of a chuffing noise. And that's his way of kind of saying that he's excited to see Gannock. It's just little bits of communication. He is quite vocal in the breeding season. The others two are pretty quiet, but yeah, Henry's quite vocal. But yeah, it's just how they communicate with each other. Mostly they communicate through body language, but they do have the odd vocal there as well. Yes, they definitely want lunch. They're definitely expecting lunch right now. They eat variably throughout the day. We don't have any set times. We try to keep things variable as we can, just so they don't always, thank you, Henry. They don't always get used to the same thing. And then if, you know, the routine changes, then they get upset. So we try to keep things as variable as we can. And just, I don't know, they eat when they're ready. So once we're done here, I'll get them some lunch. Yeah, so that's them. So they're out in the lake enclosure at the moment. So this is our biggest enclosure that has the lake. You can kind of see just through there. And so they're free to do essentially whatever they want throughout the day. We're here just to essentially wait on them hand and foot. And we like it that way. But once we get out of the hormones and once they kind of calm down a little bit, we'll be able to house Gannock and Henry together and they can interact and they can hang out together. Gannock's just so chill and so docile that he doesn't stand up for himself when Henry's being, for lack of a better word, mean. So yeah, we keep them separated now, but Inukshuk puts Henry in his place. He's a very good teacher. Yeah, so Gannock has this whole enclosure here. So he's got little bits of forest. He's got a big pool in there as well. That's the building that we were just in. Hey, baby. So they're super comfortable with me like this, as you can see. If I was to go in there, I probably would never come out again. They've never had human interaction like that. Henry here is just under 1,000 pounds, so I definitely don't want to take him on because he's just massive. So yeah, everything we do is through mesh or through some barrier between us and them. And you know, they're really smart, they're very well trained. So anytime, say we need to look inside their mouths or we need to check the bottom of their feet, we can ask them to show us those different things. They'll open their mouths, they'll show us their feet, they'll stand up, they'll roll over, they'll even give blood voluntarily. So if we need to do any kind of health testing for any reason, or maybe there's a research project that they would like blood, they give it voluntarily. So we ask them to give their paw if they want. They will present it and then we will take blood from them. There is a lot of food involved in these processes constantly because food is very reinforcing for them. So we always try to make it as fun and enjoyable for them as possible. And generally they're pretty happy to take part. But you can see them smelling. It's got a bit of a breeze today. So they just kind of always got their noses in the air. But yeah, that's them. So we're actually closed because of the pandemic right now. So it's really nice. It's super quiet. No one's around. That was grumpy. Go say hi? Oh, good boy. But yeah, did you guys have any other questions?
Oh, we're just soaking it all in.
Good. Yeah, Inukshuk's still quite food driven. Henry's a lot more Gannock driven, so Inukshuk's a lot more keen for lunch, but Henry's just kind of always keen to see what's going on. Aren't you, babies? So when we do open again to the public obviously don't come to this fence, they come to this fence. But yeah, if you guys were ever this far north, you can come visit and come see the bears and check out what they do in a day.
Oh, we absolutely have to come and visit.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, it's pretty special up here, like it's just, we do our own thing up here. We're not, we're not crazy busy. So the bears are just free to kind of live their lives as they wish. So, some days you may not see a bear. Like there are people that come and they just don't even see a bear because they're just off doing their own thing. Other days you'll see this when they're just, right up at the fence and they're just kind of hanging out with each other. So it's a little hit and miss. But when you get to see the good stuff, it's pretty great.
Oh, just fantastic. Amy, we can't thank you enough.
Thank you. I'm so glad that we actually got to do this and you get to see the boys as well. That's perfect.
We have enjoyed it so very much, and I'm so glad it finally happened.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for reaching out to us all that time ago.
And we'll see you in person one day.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, if you do come up, just shoot us an email, let us know. Say, hey, we did a talk and I want to check things out. So yeah, we can come and have a chat.
Okay, that'll be great. Thanks again. Have a great day.
Okay, thanks guys. Bye.